Hello, guys. So, the Russia Ukraine standoff is among the news these days. And much of what happened in 2013-14 is related to the incidents of today. Now, Ukraine was by and large a part of Soviet Union in the Cold War era. Okay, and much before that also, except for maybe two times, say in the post World War One period, for a brief amount of time, it was independent, and way back in the 17th century also. And of course, after 1991, it was independent. But the influence of Russia over Ukraine can be seen from the fact that one third of the Russians, okay, one third of the Ukrainians have Russian as their mother tongue, and 1 in 6 Ukrainians are ethnically Russians. Now, talking about the incidents of 2013-14, now at that time, uh, the then president, Viktor Yanukovych, rejected a deal which uh, was supposed to, economically integrate Ukraine towards European Union. So he was not in, he didn't appreciate that kind of a deal. He rejected that deal, which was not, appreciated by the people of Ukraine. So there were mass protests regarding the same, which was violently put down by the forces. But eventually, the protests kept on increasing in numbers, and the then Russian president, Viktor Yanukovych, fled the country. Now, these incidents, culminated in Russian invasion of Crimea in 2014, and there were two separate Minsk agreements signed between Russian separatists and Ukraine for the ceasefire of the conflict between them. Minsk is basically the capital city of Belarus, where the agreements were signed. Minsk one was not effective and it was violated later on, and Minsk two was also not implemented properly, since the interpretations of the agreement were different by both the sides. For example, Ukrainians interpreted it as them getting complete control of the Russian separatists dominated territory, getting control over the Russian-Ukrainian border, elections over Donbass. Donbass was basically territory dominated by Russian separatists, and so on. Whereas the Russians, interpreted it as an agreement wherein the separatists would get better say, or would be represented in the government, and thereby in turn Russians would get a veto power over Kiev's foreign policy. Kiev is basically the capital of Ukraine. So only then they would give control of the Russia-Ukraine border to Kiev. So this was basically the Minsk conundrum, as they say, which was not sufficient to resolve the issues between, or sort out the issues between the two sides. Now, following these events, there were a lot of sanctions put on Russia by the Western European countries and US. There was also a threat of pulling out Russia from SWIFT. SWIFT is basically an acronym for Software for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, which is a standard platform for financial transactions across the world. So, under this threat, Russia came up with its own system known as System for SPFS. SPFS, which is Russia's own system for financial message transaction, and this in English it translates to System for Transfer of Financial Messages. But this was not effective later on. And also there were a lot of cyber attacks after the war, after the annexation of Crimea. There were a lot of cyber attacks in Ukraine. So like that. Now, coming forward to the incidents of these days. So Russia deployed like close to 130,000 troops in across the border of Ukraine, because they were not appreciative of the fact that Ukraine would join the NATO alliance. The current president, who is Volodymyr Zelensky, he is in more inclined towards NATO rather than Kremlin, and so that's that. So negotiations have been taking place over a couple of months between Russia and the Western European countries and also the US, but it is not leading to anywhere. And US is suspecting an invasion in February. Although very recently Russia has said that they won't be invading Ukraine, and they have also claimed to withdraw its troops, but US still suspects Russia to actually invade Ukraine and not pulling out troops eventually from Ukraine. Now, whether Russia will actually invade Ukraine or not, that time will only tell. But definitely, we have to consider the global impacts. For example, the rise of oil prices. Now, oil is rising consistently over the past few months, and with Saudi Arabia refusing to increase the production, rather the supply of oil, crude oil, that is also not helping any cause. And also in India, we can see how volatile the stock markets is, and one of the primary reasons is the Ukrainian standoff, Russia-Ukraine standoff. So as I said earlier, only time will tell whether Russia will invade Ukraine or not. So let's see. Thank you.